Hi, my name is Marco Heidinger. I am an iOS and Swift developer, and today, in this video, I will show you how to run Swift code that is contained in your framework, gets loaded and automatically executed when the framework gets loaded. This is especially useful for SDK and framework developers who want to provide convenience options so that the app developer doesn't have to call an API explicitly. A use case would be Dynatrace. If you use the binary framework from Dynatrace, they will automatically start recording data, usage information from your app. And you as an app developer do not have to import that framework. You don't have to call an explicit API from them. It just happens automatically. And that's because they're using this technique, which I will show you now. For this case, I have provided you a sample application, which is available on GitHub. I have already cloned it. And what I will do is first I will modify it to illustrate really that I don't use any explicit calls to the framework. So I have here two libraries. I will remove them and I will then run the application. And what you can see here, I currently have in my app code one print statement. And this sample application is built with Swift UI, and I'm using here an app delegate. And when the did finish launching with options function gets called from the app delegate, then I'm printing this statement. And I don't have any imported frameworks. I don't have any calls to these frameworks. But if I add one of the libraries, then you will see that suddenly more information are getting logged. And how is this possible? So first, let's look what this mixed framework is. It's a framework, and it contains Objective-C and Swift code. So there's no native way to declare in Swift that this code should automatically run. But in Objective-C, you can create for a class conforming to NSObject, you can implement a static load function. And this function gets called when the framework gets initialized. In this case, I am then delegating the majority of the work to a Swift class. I initialize the Swift class and I can call then functions where the main logic will happen. So in this case, we have seen here that this print statement is executed by this nslog statement. Then in the Swift class, in its initializer, I'm logging some information, and when the function of the Swift class gets called as well. And there is, besides the load function, there is another option to run code automatically when your framework gets loaded. And this is by defining an framework initializer with the __ attribute option here. And then after this all initialization logic gets called, then finally the app delegate gets called. And that's important now to know that this will have impact to the load time of the application which uses your framework. So you should not do too much or heavy operation in the initialization phase. If you have more computation logic to be executed, then put this in a main thread so that you do not block the user interface. And I was curious, does this work also for a Swift package? So I have created also a Swift package here. And you cannot mix and match Objective-C code and Swift code in the same target. So I had to define two targets, one for Objective-C code and one for Swift code. And I provide one library product, which then uses the Objective-C module. I have a very similar code. I have implemented the load function here in Objective-C, and then I delegate logic to a Swift class. And when we add this Swift package to the application, then we will see that these functions also will automatically be called. Remember, I don't make any calls to the framework. I do not even import these frameworks, but because I link to them in my application target, the code gets executed. So now you know how to write code so that it gets automatically executed when your framework gets loaded. You have to write a little bit of Objective-C code, unfortunately, but then you have the advantage to delegate most of the logic to a Swift class, and then be more familiar in there with what you have to write. One word of advice, I think it's the Swift package example is just for illustration purposes, because it has a clear drawback. If you want to delegate then calls from Objective-C to Swift, the Swift APIs have to be public because you have to cross the module border from the Objective-C module to the Swift module. In a framework, for example, then compiled as a binary framework, you don't have this. Your Swift code can be private, and in Objective-C, it's then one framework. You can call this internal code without any problems. Okay, if you liked that video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel, and read my blogs about Swift and IIS development. Have a good one.